So welcome. We are going to go through the Agile Certified Practitioner. My name is Jim Hannon. I'm actually a adjunct professor here at BU. I teach 649. That's the new Agile Project Management class. So I know I have one student from the first class we ran this last semester. The class itself is, I consider it somewhat groundbreaking. I have a number of other designations through PMI and a number of designations through Scrum Alliance. I'm also a PhD student, getting close. You always say getting close to finishing. I'm very passionate about this because not only is it a better way to work, and not just from a software perspective. How many people in software here? Anybody? Okay, you can all leave. No, sorry. No. Really what this does is it's a completely new way to work. I've actually done this with the Secretary of Defense. I've done it with the Navy. I've done it with the defense contractor. I worked with, anyone know Stewart Healthcare? Anybody from Massachusetts? Yeah, I worked with Stewart Healthcare in regards to this. So it's a way to work that is not overly revolutionary, but it's very simple, all right? And it really gets rid of a lot of the bureaucracy and a lot of the inefficiencies that you have. So what we're going to try to cover today is two things. We're going to try to cover is what is Agile, really three things. What is Agile? Second thing is we're going to talk about the ACP. Does anyone have an ACP here? Okay, does anyone want to go for an ACP? ACP is an Agile Certified Practitioner. Is anyone planning on going for it? You're all supposed to raise your hands, folks. All right. So it's a very good certification through PMI. Anyone here a Scrum Master, certified Scrum Master? Okay, good, excellent, all right. Now, one of the big themes that I do here is, one, we talk about the ACP, two, we talk about Agile Project Management. What do you think Agile Project Management is? Any suggestions?
Managing a project that is having development occur under the Agile methodologies.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody else? Good, thank you. Anybody else? I always get the answer, managing projects agile, period, right? Go ahead, Dan.
I was going to say delivering projects utilizing Agile Frameworks as opposed to traditional Waterfall frameworks.
Exactly. Now, let me ask you a question. As you start to, how many people have an iPhone here? Right? Do you use all your functionality? No, you don't. So one of the main research points in Agile especially is, as you look at systems, whether it be an iPhone, all right, a piece of software, a medical device, manufacturing. And by the way, I've done Agile in manufacturing, company out in West Boylston. As you look at that, research shows 45% of what you build, nobody ever uses. That's a pretty startling statistic, don't you agree? Yeah, exactly. So 45% of what you use. So Agile says, you know what? Build the right thing at the right time and make sure it's done with high quality. So we're going to go through that today. So a few things we're going to discuss here. The brief intro to Agile, Agile Frameworks, and Dan brought it up. Dan's one of my former students, brought it up very good. This is a framework. It's just not about understanding Agile specifically in the software industry, but this is something you can actually transport to any industry, period. I've actually done this. I have a little product that I use for colleges called Scrum Think, and actually try to craft classes in more of an Agile format. Now, there's a company out there in Norway, I believe, and they have a company called Scrum. And what they've done is they've taken Agile and they've broken through the mold. And what they found was they took sixth graders and they used Agile and implemented it into the classroom. And what they found was the sixth graders could not wait to get into the classroom. They were broken into teams. They were given goals. They had backlogs of material they had to produce for their teachers. And they saw the test scores rise dramatically. The students become much more engaged, right? And also they become much more bought into the process as opposed to, you know what, let me just tell me what I need to do and I'll finish it. We're going to go through the framework. Product visioning and the backlog. I'm going to give you a brief overview of what Agile is. So if someone doesn't know about Agile, this is a great talk to go through. Then we're going to go through iterations, and we're going to go through the team environment. So one of the big things you see here is we're uncovering better ways of developing software. Take the word software out. And what you're going to find is, again, like I want to keep reiterating, you can do this anywhere. It's a better way to work. Now, as you start to look at this, it's very important to understand that the framework is really the key. Now, there's a lot of hoopla out there about Agile. And again, one of the biggest fallacies about Agile is if you do it, you get to the point where you sort of give the development people the keys, and they go hog wild, and they go off and do whatever they want. If you do what I like to call disciplined Agile, you're going to get a better product, you're going to get a product out to market quicker, and also, guess what? You're going to get a product with much more quality. All right, so that's an important feature to have, a very important feature to have. So here's some good quotes. While there is value in the items we do right, we value the items on the left more. All right. Now, again, keep in perspective my research that I just brought up. 45% of what you build, no one ever uses. So if you're in software right now and you actually go back to your team Monday morning, what you're going to find out is chances are the technical folks have overdeveloped, they've over-engineered, all right? And usually what ends up happening is they're trying to build something that they think the client wants. That's not the case anymore. Right, the client wants things quicker, they want them better, and they want them at low cost. So Agile addresses a lot of those things. So let me go through AD 649 because again, I met with my facilitators today, and I'm not because I paid Dan or anything to say this. What do you think about the course last semester?
It was really good. As a pilot course, it was very interesting. A lot of the stuff was like, it's a lot of work, but in an Agile world, you're constantly working on small increments to finish out each sprint. And that's how the class was set up. It was in sprints. So after I think it was week 3, we started
Yep.
our sprints, and we're executing everything in sprints within our team. So it wasn't just learning about Agile, it was actually executing all of our assignments in that way. So it's very interesting.
Technically, the course is Agile. We brought it to that point. I have a very clear personal value for this course. This course will be one of the standard bearers in the industry, okay? So I would suggest, how many people are BU students here are currently going through? I would strongly suggest looking at this course because the group of facilitators we have are phenomenal. All right, people who practice this every day. And let me sort of backtrack. Let me give you some background to where I come from. I joined BU probably about 12 years ago as a facilitator, but also at the same time I run a corporate PMO for a company called FIS. Well, about 16 months ago I was approached by a gentleman who's actually one of my facilitators, and he said, "What do you know about Agile?" And I said, "I've done it before, quite a bit." Well, we started with a group of 4,000 developers worldwide. And we got to the point where we were practicing, as of October 2014, 31% of our company was practicing some sort of Agile practice or best practice. We left last year, 2015, we had 71%. Okay? Now, personally, I take very little credit for it because I was sort of quarterbacking it along with this other gentleman. It was the teams. The teams took to this. They understood it. And they realized that this is actually a way for them to become more successful. So if you're in software, there is no reason why you should not be looking at this, plain and simple, okay? So we actually got bought by another company in August. Now we're actually going through another Agile transformation, and there's roughly about 24, almost 30,000 developers in this company, okay? I'm heading to London in mid-June to actually work with our emerging markets group. So let's get back to the course. The course is very clear. Like Dan said, we executed on sprints. A lot of the comments I got from the course in AD 649 was, boy, I did a lot of work, but you know what? I can actually take this tomorrow morning and I can use it. I had a lot of previous students in other classes, and I still stay in contact with them, and they were very clear to me. They said, you know what? 2 things. I learned how to do Agile project management, and 2, I actually leveraged the facilitators and me to actually convince my management to go Agile, which was phenomenal, okay? And again, as I go through what you as a project manager need to do to become agile, I have 3 roles for you, which I'll break in the next few minutes. So this is the course as it looks. We have an Agile toolkit. We have Agile in practice. Now, again, BU is a phenomenal program. I've done through all the courses, phenomenal faculty. But there's one thing that I learned here is students need to hear from people who practice this, and VJ does it, and Jenny does it. Students also need to hear from other people who are practicing it every day. So right now we have 5 videos. And what I did was I asked people in the field, what's Agile mean to you? And I gave them 4 different topics. Well, they went through and I did 2 gentlemen from a manufacturing company, and they go on length about Agile and how Agile project management can work. Well, the 5th video came out last year, late in the class. Anyone know Jeff Sutherland? Ever have heard of him, right? Yeah, one of the 2 creators of Agile / Scrum. Yeah, we used Jeff's book in the class. I know Jeff pretty well. He came out and put a stamp of approval and said, Jim's using my book. This is a great course, okay? So again, we have the original founder of Agile who's actually somewhat integrated into this course. We also created this thing called an Agile Innovation Lab. And I'm proud of this because one of my facilitators and I talked the other night, and I said, it's plain and simple, folks. We want to teach these folks how to do Agile right, how to make sure if they're not doing Agile, we teach them how to actually go out and advocate for it, but also academically you are put through your paces, as Dan can attest. Well, the Agile Innovation Lab is a non-gradable forum, and we have 2 things in there, and it's new this semester. And we have a blog. We have 2 blogs. Well, one blog is you have a problem in Agile, all right, and you want to take your theory and match it to practice. You can actually ping one of us, one of the facilitators or myself, and we'll help you. We'll walk you through as you go. So what I found last semester was I had a number of students who I had in previous classes, and they started to go through and they said, we practiced this yesterday, but it didn't work just as the way you said. So we made it more formal. So there's a very clear link between the theory we teach you and also the practice. The other thing which is very appealing is a lot of students academically like to do research. From someone who's towards the tail end of his PhD, it's very little literature out there in regards to Agile project management. So I also have a second blog where if students do want to do research, we'll help you, all right? And we'll sort of become a leading center of Agile project management. We use Jim Highsmith's book, Agile Project Management. I think it's a good book. There's not many good books out there in the field. And here's a view of the course itself. So we go through the Agile Manifesto, building value in your teams, going through adapting over conforming. All the things in the Agile Manifesto, we do every unit, and we constantly reiterate it back to you, all right? And you actually practice it. So by the time you leave this course, you will have done Agile project management at least 3, sometimes up to 4 times. You will have gone from beginning to end. So that's the first thing on the course, which we're very excited about. The second thing is, if you look up here, we need a new paradigm, folks. Now, I've talked at PMI, I've talked to a number of things. I'm doing a lot of work with the pharma industry, and guess what? In regards to Agile project management. I actually sat with 6 or 7 of them. I've sat with them 3 times, and they said, we liked it because they're very heavy into project management, very structured. We're actually trying to come out with an Agile project management model for the life sciences pharma industry. So the first thing I said to them was, and it was somewhat intimidating, these people are extremely credentialed. I said, everything you thought about project management, park it over here, and let's try to take what we need from that and try to bring Agile project management into it. And to their credit, they've been very receptive to it. All right, I learned a lot, and that's, again, part of the beauty. I think Stephen had said that. Part of the beauty about talking at these types of seminars, I learn as much from you folks as hopefully you learn from us, all right? So again, Agile project management going into the pharma industry. So you have to get to a different outlook here. Now, one of the big things I always preach about is, can Agile and project management coexist? What do you guys think? You think it can? Yeah, it can. All right. I have a friend who worked at Staples, and we talked at PMI. This is a long time ago. And we both met at it, and he said, Jim, I just went to Staples, and God, anybody, hopefully no one works at Staples here. No? Okay. All right, good. He said, it's a nightmare. I said, Paul, what's the matter? And Paul has this wonderful British accent. So we did a presentation, and we both sort of tag teamed it together. And the people were just like, whoa, wait a minute, this is good stuff, right? Well, as he turned to me, he said, Jim, they've decided to take the project manager and the Scrum Master and keep them both on the project at the same time. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, they just don't get it, okay? So again, there's 3 roles here, and I'm going to break the first role to you right now. And this is something I'm very, very passionate about. How many PMPs in the audience? Okay? You need to be a change agent, folks. You need to be the first one in front of your senior executives. The gentleman across the hall is talking to the C-suite. Agile is about continuous improvement, not about every 3 months looking at your process, every day. Repeat, every day. Okay? I kicked off 2 pilots with the team yesterday. The team got a little depressed, and I said, guys, don't worry about it. I said, where were you yesterday? And they said, well, we didn't know the answers we know today. I said, there you go, you're better. Okay? Agile project management is, you guys have to passionately advocate. You bring a tremendous set of skills, folks. Use them. All right? And make sure you, as a project manager, are leading the charge to go in and say, hey, this Agile stuff looks good. And Ginny hit the nail right on the head, because I've known Ginny for a long time as VJ and the rest of the folks. She uses multiple methodologies. All right? So a lot of people use straight, Waterfall, or they use straight this. That's an important aspect to use. Use what makes sense to get the work done. It's as simple as that, okay? So as you look at this, Agile versus the traditional Waterfall, so there's certain aspects of this. Now, as you look at the left-hand side, and it says, what do I do in Agile? Now, one of the things you do in Agile, I'm sort of going to give some broad strokes here. And again, questions feel free. One of the things you do in Agile is, people always say, I have a product owner that I sit with, and he goes, Jim, and he has a wonderful Texas accent. But the minute he says it to me, I go, uh-oh, here we go. He goes, I cannot not do a requirements document. I said, that's fine. I said, that's okay. I said, does it make sense to do a requirements document? That's okay. I said, but make it into consumable chunks, all right, that people can actually consume and they can actually take action on, all right? As opposed to that, Jeff Sutherland uses a thing, and this is a very good analogy. As your requirements grow, guess what? What happens? The backlog grows, but the old way, if your requirements grew, what's that? People don't read them. They just don't read them. He would write 150, 200 pages, and finally we left a meeting one time, and I said, Jeff, no offense, but nobody reads your documents. And he went, what do you mean? I said, because again, then we had scope creep, we had scope issues, you name it. Now again, what happens is, Agile as a whole, PMBOK has some extremely valuable aspects to it, all right? And this is sort of our start of the mapping. And in the next slide, you'll see more of a process mapping. You got your 5 process areas, 5, thank you, 5 process areas. How do I actually map those? Highsmith does a tremendous job about that, okay? So again, I tell project managers who enter this class and project managers I coach, don't discard everything in PMBOK, all right? There's certain aspects of it that are going to be very, very usable, all right? One of the big aspects that Agile falls down on, and I'm very clear about that, is risk, okay? And I've taught the risk course. I've done a lot of work in risk. I have an RMP through PMI. But what happens in Agile? Do you think Agile actually addresses risk? Who thinks it does? How does it address it?
I think because as you're delivering, you're starting to notice a lot of the risks as they occur. And because of change management, you're allowed to change a lot quicker without going through all the documentation of the traditional change management.
Exactly, exactly. Go ahead. Do you have a comment?
Sometimes the teams will focus on most of the hard stuff first, get that out of the way.
Yep.
So that the overall timeline
Exactly. And we're going to sort of go through the overview of Agile. You folks in the middle who do software, do you guys do, go ahead.
When you build it in components and you test each component instead of waiting till the very end, like in a waterfall method, then you're doing testing along the way. That accounts for risk.
Exactly. Exactly. How about you folks in the software industry in the middle? Do you guys do well at risk management? Be honest. You can always do better, right? You can always do better. But one of the areas that Agile is transparent, okay? You can't hide. And what happens is every time you do a sprint, you actually see the problems right away, okay? But
One of the things I'm going to add, I think it just kind of says promotes. It's okay to fail fast.
exactly, exactly. We have a client in Minnesota. I'll name them. I'm sure they wouldn't mind. U.S. Bank, USBI, a massive bank. All right. Well, we started doing Agile, and my boss said, Jim, get on the phone with them, explain what Agile is. So I explained it to them, and one of the people in the head of the technology area said, why aren't you guys doing this earlier? Well, the other side of the bank said, no, we need more risk management. Okay. So it's almost like a split personality. We get to the point where we want to do things quicker, we want to do them better, all right? But at the same time, risk management still takes its place. Now, one of the reasons why I say Agile falls down to risk management is there is no coordinated, there's no structure, all right? So you as an Agile project manager, which hopefully Monday you go back and you say, you know what, I'm going to do this. I can actually bring my risk management hat with me, all right, and I can give some structure to Agile project management in the risk area, okay? Again, it's all about making it continuously improve, make it better every day. So I pulled this graphic, really, the process group relationships. As you start to go through this, okay, and I met with a project manager yesterday, and I'm going to give you extremely fresh examples, some of them today. I sat with one of my project managers, and we were getting to the point where he came back and he said to me, well, we're in initiation right now. I said, okay. I said, but break your mold. Don't stay in that. You, as a project manager, can still stay in that mold, okay? Because he was very hierarchical. He just kept telling the team what to do. I said, Bill, quiet. Don't say a word. Paint the picture, okay, and let the team figure it out. And there was dead silence for about 3 to 4 minutes. And someone finally spoke up and said, I know what to do. And I said, Bill, it works, see? And all of a sudden that came into 15 other conversations. And it feeds upon itself, folks. How many people practice Agile here? Okay. You guys attest to that fact? Does it feed upon itself when you do it correctly? Yeah, it does. What's that?
The ceremonies support it.
Yeah, the ceremony support it. And you bring up, what's your name?
Jennifer.
Jennifer brings up an excellent point. Disciplined Agile, and I know I'm sort of getting a little scattered here, but we're going to cover all our material. There's 4 ceremonies in Agile. 1 is a sprint planning session. 2 is a daily Scrum call. 3 is a sprint demo. And 4 is a sprint retrospective, okay? And I'm going to go through all this in our discussion today. If you practice those 4 things, you're going to do good Agile. And Jeff always taught me, he said, Jim, there's bad Agile and there's good Agile. And I said, what's he talking about? Well, I've done teams that have not done all 4 of those ceremonies, and guess what? I get bad Agile, okay? So you as a project manager can still visualize the 5 process areas, but as they do map into Agile processes. And if you look at Highsmith's book, he goes through those, all right? That's a very important aspect to know. But be very careful about this. I always teach project managers, don't take the PMBOK and throw it on the table and say, well, on page 52, we're in this stage, and here's all the paperwork we need to fill out, okay? Agile says that's okay. You know, we do need some discipline in our process, but also don't overburden the team. So again, we have different things in here. Agile is again, you know, I had a discussion today with a gentleman who, he actually ran the corporate PMO, and my PMO reported indirectly into him. We had a long discussion, and I think you guys can attest to this. We spent weeks discussing what to call our initiative. Well, the CTO of SunGard said, I want to call it iterative. Now that took us like 4 weeks. Sound familiar? Right? You want to change things, but it takes you 4 weeks to figure out what to call it. All right? So the first thing we did was, when FIS bought us, we said, get rid of the word iterative. No one, at first, no one understands it. Second thing is, no one can spell it. Okay? I don't know how many times I've misspelled that. Well, Agile isn't an umbrella term. Underneath it, there's different methods to do, okay? One is extreme programming. They have a thing called Scrum, which is sort of a combination of Scrum and Kanban. They have rational unified process, feature-driven development. There's a whole different other thing. We do a lot of Kanban. Anybody who works in software, do you have a group of people who actually deal with bugs? Right? Well, Kanban is a very good process. It's driven out of the Japanese companies, where you sort of have this work in process and it continuously move things across, and you sort of get rid of all the silos. So that's a very effective process. We do some Kanban. We do mainly Scrum, which is the predominant one. We also do a lot of extreme programming, and we also do a lot of pair programming. So we have two programmers sit together, and they go off and they do their stuff, okay? Now, the other thing we learned was specifically feature-driven development. We also have test-driven development. Now, let me be, anyone here in QA? No? Any QA people here? Well, the QA people have the toughest time dealing with Agile, I always found. Because one, it takes away that discipline of do your requirements, do your unit testing, do this, and then when you're done, you can give it to me and I'll test it. Well, what we do now is we do a process called DevOps. And what we do is we take everybody from our organization and we put them into the team. We have a core team, and then we have people who satellite around it. Those people in the core team, one is a QA person. So this woman yesterday, we're going through a pilot, and she said, I said, well, how are you doing on the test script? She goes, well, when it comes to my area, I said, no. She goes, well, where should I test it? I pointed to this guy, Ken, and I said, when he tests it, you test it. Test it early, test it often, and yes, you're going to fail early, and you're going to fail often, right? But one of the big things about failing early and failing often is, would you rather fail in the first or second week of a project, or would you rather fail in the fourth week, or the fifth month, or the sixth month, and all of a sudden someone says, oh my God, we got a problem, okay? What would you rather do? You'd rather know up front, right? Correct? Okay? So let's look at this. Let's look at some statistics. Various Agile methodologies. Obviously, Scrum's the most common. Other ones are starting to come up. I'm going to a SAFe, Skilled Agile Framework class, and I think Raj Hedder's giving a discussion about that. What we approach at the company we work at now is you really have to have Agile down. You have to have a good working knowledge of Agile. You have to be practicing it. If you don't do that, going to Skilled Agile Framework is useless. It's almost like, well, you know what? I need to go learn how to ride a bike. But what I do is I just go in and stop pedaling, and I kind of keep my balance, okay? So you have to put discipline through the organization. You have to make sure that the organization understands this new method. Now, what's one of the biggest problems when you have a change in an organization? Or you want to bring a change into an organization? What do you think? Huh? Fear, right? Change, right? You've heard about managing up, right? Correct? What's managing up? You have to manage the C-suite, right, or the executives. So when the last group, or the group we're doing right now, I went to the gentleman who's the president / general manager, and I said, what does Agile mean to you? He said, well, we just cut projects up quicker, and we move them into production quicker. I went, uh-oh. So you have to educate up. You have to educate down. One very good technique for people who may leave here and say, you know what? This sounds really good. I'm going to go back to my boss and his boss or her boss, and I'm going to advocate for Agile. Well, one of the good techniques we learned, especially where I run a coach's bench, is I actually take teams, when we start to do the transformation, I ask all the managers to leave the room, everybody. And I have all just the teams. I did this the other day with the team in Wisconsin, and I say, guys, tell me everything you think. Well, sometimes it's nothing, all right? And then you ask a few questions, and the floodgates open. Fear, change, is my job going to be cut? All right? What do I do now with Agile? What's my role? So what we do is we do that as we call it, a no-holds-barred meeting. And then what I do is I come out and I turn to the senior people and say, I'm not going to name names, but here's all your problems. And I addressed almost every one of them, or one of my coaches did, okay? So that's an important piece if you want to go out and try to learn this. And part of my goal here today is to give you real practical things, not just theoretical or things that are sort of hanging out there, but real practical things learned from the experience I went through. So the PMI ACP review. So as we look at this, we have, there's certain sections here. 50% is on tools and techniques, 50% on knowledge and skills, and it's across the Agile domains. Folks, this is an easy test. I shouldn't say easy. I apologize. All right, anyone from PMI. This is a doable test. The PMP test is much more difficult, okay? I would strongly suggest, though, that you do either become a certified Scrum Master, okay, or I believe it's been a while since I got my ACP. I was one of the first groups. I would strongly suggest you take a prep course for this, okay? Most of the things you learn, all right, in the prep course for like a CSM or something like that are very transferable, all right, very transferable. So verification, 2,000 hours of general project experience, 24 hours of Agile training, 1,000 hours working on Agile teams or with Agile methodologies. PMI will audit you, all right, if you haven't done a PMI application in a while. I used to teach the PMP prep classes, and it never fails. As I would do that, 3 months later, someone would say, I got audited, okay? So what I would strongly suggest, again, is it's a good certification to have. A lot of the government asks for this now. So a very practical point out of this presentation. And let's talk about the Affordable Care website, right? Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. What was the problem with Obamacare on the website? What do you think? Couldn't handle traffic. But for the folks who are in IT, what do you have? You have a back end, right, with your database, and you have a front end, correct? Take a guess what was done Agile. The back end was done Agile. The front end was not. As this was exploding, I was going through my certified Scrum product owner, and Jeff actually taught the course. And I said, Jeff, what's going on? He goes, Jim, they didn't follow their own advice. They did the back end Agile. The back end works fine, but the front end was a disaster. So what did they have to do? They called in people from Google, called in people from Apple, called in all the big heavy hitters, and guess what they did? They did it Agile. It works, folks, okay? It works. The marketability, the other question I always get, not just in the class, but also outside when I talk or when I do consulting or I work at my full-time job, is do I need the PMP and the ACP? I think you do, okay? From you as a professional, it gives you another rounded, your box of you as a professional gets a little more rounded, okay? It's a very good certification to have. And again, I've heard from numerous people, because I've done some work with the government, that that's what they look for. So they take all the resumes and they go, oh, all the ACPs, throw them over here and we'll talk to them first. All right, questions about that? No? Okay. Okay, hot trends, again, unscientific research. So if you look at these, you have 15,656 jobs. Everything you look at, I'm usually used to walking around, folks. I'm a little tied here to the podium. But you have an enormous amount of jobs. Anything you look at in the IT industry, anything you look at, a lot of these industries now are asking for Agile, okay? All right, especially the IT industry. I went for an interview, God knows, 25 years ago, and he asked me about Agile, and it's right when I first started doing it, I had no idea. So it's an important thing to understand. This is where the growth area is. Now, the other piece is, I gave you your first new role as a change agent. The other piece is, how many people are non-IT here? What industries are you in, the gentleman in the middle? Energy. Energy, ooh. I gave this talk similar about our transformation at SunGard last year. A gentleman who did nuclear power plants came up to me and said, I need to talk to you. He goes, we need to figure out different ways to build them, okay? Would this pertain to the energy industry?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
You would, right? Okay. What about the woman behind you? Pharmaceuticals. Ah, I learned more about your industry. So we may want to connect afterwards, okay? So again, a new way to work. And guess what? This is not, oh my God, someone just thought this up yesterday. This has been in existence since 2001, all right? But now what's happening is, and I've worked with Jeff in Scrum Inc., and I said, Jeff, I have this thing called Scrum Think. He goes, great. He goes, let's keep going with that, all right? And I have other products in the back burner. But you can bring this anywhere, absolutely anywhere. So again, there's a huge demand out there for this, and it's going to continue as the graphs show. Okay, so what's in it for me? As I look at this, fortune and glory, you hope, right? Everyone wants to get to a point to what? You're always marketable. You always have a job. Now again, what ends up happening is if you do project management, whether it be in pharmaceuticals or energy, what other industries do we have out there? Anybody else? Yeah. Insurance. Oh, this is another good one. Another one. That's excellent. What about you, sir, in the corner? Railroads. I'd be interested to talk to you. All right? Because again, you can sort of use a Scrum, Kanban, different type of method. Okay? Again, if you want to figure out ways to get your product or service out quicker, you may want to. We may want to talk. Okay? So again, as you start to look at this, my peers will finally respect me. I'll be honest with you. Do you think project management is well respected in the company you work for? Thank God BJ is not in the classroom right now. Do you think it's respected? How many people say yes? How many people say no? Oh, the no's are a lot higher, right? No's are a lot higher. Why some reasons for no?
It's difficult for us to figure out what position the project manager should sit on the team.
Exactly. Exactly. Great answer. How about in the back? What's that? You're seen by a blocker. Ooh, that's even uglier, right? Time consuming. Why do I have to give you a status? Right? I have a project manager who's phenomenal at doing minutes, and I said one day, Bill, nobody reads your minutes. He goes, what do you mean? I said, nobody reads them, right? You're thought of as a blocker. It's time consuming, okay? When I teach project managers in the fine art of project management, I say, you shouldn't have to sit with someone and ask them a status. You should be so tightly integrated with your team that inherently you know where they are. All right, if you're doing status meetings, you've already lost it. You can do status meetings. Now the Scrum call, you have a status meeting once a week. You have a Scrum call daily. So your first role is a change agent. Change project management in your company and change it quickly. Because when the budget axe falls, the PMO is always one of the first places they look for. All right? Credibility in the marketplace. Obviously, again, part of this is the ACP, how to match PMBOK, how to make you a better Agile project manager. We have a course out there that will do that. All right? And I'm more than willing to talk to anybody after this discussion. So as you look at this, PMI, increase the practitioner's versatility in project management tools and techniques. I always found that one of the big issues with project managers, including myself, is you have project managers who are very tool and technique oriented, okay? And they try to apply tools and techniques to everything. Well, whenever I teach a beginning project management class, I always turn to the students and say, take out your PMBOK, look in the index for a mother who has a sick child, and she's an essential part of the team. And usually I have 2 or 3 students that go like this, right? That was a joke, by the way. All right? Well, guess what? It doesn't get thought of. Agile deals with things as they happen, okay? And part of the thing, we developed this course, I was very explicit. We had a long discussion with the other 2 facilitators I had last semester, and we had a split. Should we put all the students together in the time zone? And then finally I weighed in and I said, no, don't do that. What we purposely did is we put 2 students in separate time zones. We had one team with a gentleman in Japan, one woman was in the Peace Corps, So what we do is we practice real true Agile project management in the course, okay? And we try to make sure that that's being done. So for the people, and there was a good portion of the people, is Agile, as project management being respected in your company, your first takeaway today is get in front of your senior people Monday, all right? If you need help, email me. I will give you deck after deck. I will coach you. I will do whatever is necessary to help you convince your senior management you need to, one, go to this course, and two, you need to transform. So that's your first role, all right? Questions about that? So there's a good amount of information, all right? There is no book of knowledge. That's why it's an exciting time in this field. That's part of the reason why we split the innovation lab into two, all right? Because again, my thesis is based off of Agile communication in project management. How does an Agile project manager communicate? Question? No. Okay. All right. You itch? Yeah. So as you start to do this, this is a groundbreaking area. Now, one of the other things I stress with my students is, don't be shy. You want to write an article, Dan, write an article. All right? Put your footprint on the industry. All right? Again, this is what I stress to the facilitators. Foster that type of innovation. Because again, what ends up happening, write it for, Project Times, write it for projectmanagement.com. Go to VJ, try to present here. All right? Because again, the beauty of the Agile community, and I can attest to this very, very carefully. I went out to the 14 plus people who signed the Agile Manifesto, and then one day I said, you know what, I'm going to link into every one of them. Guess how many people actually accepted my LinkedIn? Every one of them. Every one of them. That tells you something about this community, okay? Well, we're going to start a different community that attaches to that, and it starts here, okay? It starts with this course. It starts with you folks just by sitting here, that we're going to break some ground in Agile project management. So let's talk about Agile, all right? What's it all about? So any questions about the ACP? No?
What's your take? Obviously, there's a lot of these designations. They're provided by multiples of different training, vendors and things of that sort.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're sitting there weighing, CSM and CPO, typically like 2 or 3 day sessions that,
Yeah.
It starts and in there. What's your sense of kind of what companies are placing the real value in?
Companies are placing real value in one thing, change management, and people who understand change. That's the first thing. Second thing is companies are getting wise to the fact that, and here's the inner workings of Scrum Alliance, folks. I'm getting ready, hopefully, after I finish my PhD, to apply for a certified Scrum trainer. Well, what they did was, this was ingenious, is that for you to actually certify someone as a certified Scrum Master, you had to become a certified Scrum trainer. So they limit the population. There's only like 300 in the world. So I know a good deal of them now. The first thing they're looking for is change management. And then companies look at this and they see these groups just populate everywhere. And you have all these certified Scrum Masters who just are coming out of the woodwork. What you're going to find out is they're going to start to clamp down very quickly. They're going to start to restrict that. What I look for is someone, if I was hiring someone as an Agile person, I look that they know certified Scrum Master and the product owner. So they have both sides of the coin. And I look for someone who has a PMP. And I ask them very explicit questions about, do you understand what Agile project management is? And if they go, well, yeah, sort of, then I get a little wary. Because again, project managers need to be retooled, okay? And that goes into our second and third takeaway. All right, so I look for those three things. I look for a PMP. I look for that they know Agile and they practiced it. Not just taking the exam and they've never practiced it. And I ask people very explicitly. The other things, I'm going for a SAFE designation next week. I'd like to do those because it's challenging for me. But what it comes down to is you have to learn how to manage change. That's the most important thing. And that ties to my first theme here is, if you guys aren't managing change and pushing change, shame on you. Simple as that. Okay? Because you are ready to be fired. That's what it comes down to.
Does that answer your question, Brandon?
Kind of, I'd love to talk a little bit more about the managing change aspect
Yeah. I've started to go into that field. I have an organization that does this. There's an actual change management institute. I look for someone who's done change. That's the first thing. And organizations look for that.
Because at the end of the day, I look at Agile as just, and I've done the same certification, so I know whatever you talk about. I look at Agile, it's just another kind of trend right now. I'm not saying it's a good or bad trend,
Yeah.
it's a trend. You know, we had ISO, we've had, TQM.
CMMI and
CMMI,
Yeah.
all these things have come out. At the end of the day, all that stuff, it can be, it's whiteboarding or it's shelfware, unless it gets implemented and executed.
Yeah.
It's back with change. that you're
Yeah,
talking about.
and again, that's the piece where I probably should have been more, companies look, they'll look at the certifications, but the bottom line is, unless you've instituted change and been part of a change management team, they're going to be very wary, because you're sort of that whiteboardish type of person, all right? And believe me, folks, I'm in the middle of doing a large group right now. It's painful, all right? I always equate myself to, I walk by people's cubes, and my picture is on their cube with a big X through it, all right? Because I'm a pretty nice guy, but I'm usually not the person they want to see, okay? All right, and we're doing about 14 different groups now, and some of them are so willing, but then what happens is when you get past that management level, the people who actually have to do the work every day become overly resistant to change, overly resistant. So companies are looking for people who do change and do it well and can prove it. That's the most important thing. That help better?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Any other questions about that? Good question. Okay. So as you start to look at this, recognizes heightened customer value expectations. Your customers, right, in the software industry, do they expect better things every day, right? Does it get to the point where you go, oh my God, we can't deliver like this? And what happens on the other side of the equation? What happens? You keep getting reductions in forces, right? Right sizing, whatever they want to call it today. So I'll give you a very practical example. I'm doing a group that I sort of grew up in. We were at 180 developers. We have 63 now. That's it. All right. We have 206 top 10 projects. We do none of them well. We do it with very low quality. We miss all our dates. So here's a very practical step for you. If it sounds like the picture you're in right now, all right, so the general manager, the president said, you know what, I've been resistant to Agile, but I need you to do this. I said, okay, that's fine. So I brought in coaches from around our company, and I built a support network. And then what we did was we picked 4 people in the company, and we created what's called a change agent network. Now, again, our clients had extreme expectations, and they knew we couldn't meet them. So we created this change agent network. We did 2 things. We trained. We're starting to do pilots. At the same time, we started to squeeze the projects in the pipeline. And we said, you know what, we're not doing this right now. And listen to what I just said, right now. All right, we never say no, but we'll do it at the right time. And our clients are going, this makes sense. So our expectations are up here. Our expectations start to go down. We start to go up, and guess what? We start to meet in the middle. So it does work. It definitely works. So it's all about, it's about difficulty, or about being, okay? Adaptive versus predictive, okay? People-oriented versus process-oriented. How many people here think their company is too process-oriented? Right? What do you mean by process? Give me an example.
We have process for everything. We're going to huge insurance company on the IT side of it, and we process over process.
Yeah, you look over process, and then usually what it finds out is, I was given very explicit instructions from the president one day. We were in a planning meeting, right? We had done a communication plan. We had tried to address all the fears I've done over the last 30-odd transformations. And he ducked his head in and he said, okay, good, I said, we're this close to announce it. We had a town hall. All the people, myself and the other senior people got up and said, listen, this is what we're going to do. And we had an older gentleman, he said, you know what? I've heard this before. Where's the posters? I said, there is no posters, Willie. I said, none of that's going to happen, okay? Well, the one thing he said to me, and this drives to your point, he said, if there's a process out there that doesn't add value, just get rid of it. Simple as that. And what we found is, as we started to peel the processes back, people had no idea why they were even in existence. Had no idea. Yeah. Well, just do it. I said, well, why are we doing it? Well, you can't question that, right? So again, it's one of those things. That's your first role. All right? Now I'm going to bring you your second role. You should come out of here with 3 roles today. Your second role is, as you start to do Agile, it's very simple, folks. You become more of a super Agile program manager. Because Agile teams have one fault. And the woman, right, Michelle, or? Yeah. Jennifer. Agile teams have a tendency not to communicate with each other. You agree? Yeah. All right. So I've talked to Jeff about this, and part of my thesis is that. How do I get a better communication model out there? All right. So as you start to do this, your second role is you become more of a intermediary between the teams, okay? And you as a project manager with those skills can bring great value to that. They also have a thing called a scrum of scrums that's in there, all right? So what I do is I take the project manager, make them agile, and then put them into this program level where they're coordinating multiple teams together, okay? And I'll break the third role to you in a few minutes. Open to change. Your insurance company, they open to change?
They think they are.
They think they are. Ah! They think they are. What does change take at the senior level?
Changing the senior.
Taking commitment. What else? What's in here? Guts. It takes guts. I walked out of a session with a few gentlemen, and I said, "Oh my God, I don't think they want to change." He goes, "It isn't because they don't want to change; they don't know how to change. Because guess what? They're probably the ones who created most of it, and they created this behemoth that just ran out of control." Okay, centered around small iterations. Okay, and let's go through this. Now, as you start to look at this, right, you have different types of. How do I actually do this with complexity framework?
I'll just pause for a second. In the other room, a session on public speaking is starting. The C-suite or wherever stakeholders, if you're interested in public speaking, 10 steps, that's there. We'll take a coffee break after your session.
Okay, all right. So how do I do this with complexity? I'm a huge fan. I strongly believe, and I've done this with complex projects, okay? We had a discussion today at 11:30. We have 7 projects from USBI, 7, there we go, 7, okay? And the person who brought them in said, "Oh my God, this is too complex." I said, "Let's break them down, let's get some work done, let's make them agile, and it will work," okay? So a complex thing like building a railroad, changing senior management, okay, is definitely something you can do. You can take the most complex thing and you can actually make it agile. So as you start to look at this, let's go through some of the frameworks. Now, you've all seen this diagram, right? All right, so let's give an overview of Agile, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I think most people understand it. There's really 4 ceremonies, which we discussed earlier. The whole beauty of Agile is whatever makes the most sense to get your work done better, quicker, and with more quality will actually provide the right answer, okay? That's the most important thing as you go. What you do is, and let me give you a very practical example. My 16-year-old, soon to be 16, God bless her. She went through her 7th grade and she would come home at night. And anybody have kids that are like in the 15, 16-year-old range, right? They get very traumatic when it gets to certain grade levels. Well, she came home in the 7th grade and she said, I just don't get this. There's too much stuff coming at me, and so, of course, my wife almost rolled her eyes and hit me. I did Agile with her. I actually put a little whiteboard, a little sticky, right? And you're nodding your head. And I taught her Agile. Within 2 months, she was fine. So as we went through the Give Thanks to Scrum seminar that's done the week right before Thanksgiving, Jeff and Ken Schwaber talk, they invited me to talk and tell them about it. Okay? So I turned to Jeff and I said, it saved her. As simple as that. okay? It took something very complex, very overwhelming to someone who was, I forget what age she was, something very overwhelming to her. And what she did was she kept moving her Post-it notes from, this is the work she has to do, this is what she's doing, right? And she actually got ahead, okay? Which is something that's very, very good to see. So again, as you look at this diagram, it's very busy. But again, there's 3 roles here in Agile. One is a Scrum Master, 2 is a Product Owner, and this is the third beauty of it. There's a third role called the team. It isn't someone who does QA. It isn't someone who does business analysis. You're all the team together. We had a discussion Monday. We had another pilot meeting. And the QA person said, I said, he was in Pune. And I said, you know this program, don't you? He goes, yeah, I know this program. I said, would you do some analysis? He goes, yeah, I'll do it. And the head of QA was on the phone. He IM'd me. He said, should we be doing that? I said, yeah, why not? I said, who cares? Well, he came back and did phenomenal analysis, got the team ahead by 4 days. Okay? All right? I sat in a conference with some gentlemen from RSA Security, and I kept saying, well, who's your BA? He said, he goes, you're not getting it. This is a long time ago. He said, there's only one person, there's a team. That's it. You break down the silos. Now, for folks, go back to your first takeaway. You want to be a change agent, right? People do want to cut costs. They want to cut people, unfortunately. Agile lets you become leaner, more efficient, and more focused, okay? So, and then one of the decks I did to our senior executives, I said, you're going to need less senior managers. And they went, ooh, that sounds good. I went, uh-oh, what did I just say? All right? And it's true. The teams manage themselves. Now, do you think, for the folks in the software, let's the insurance people, do you think your team can manage itself?
Yes.
You do? Even better, so they don't need you then.
I mean, like, you probably have to, as a Scrum Master, you probably have to check out the status, but the team usually decided, like, what they can, finish the sprint.
Yeah.
They usually decided, like, a project manager is, like, making sure they are doing their work.
The project manager becomes very command and controlled. I've had a lot of people in the military in my class, no offense. Sometimes he's out of the norm. This is how you do it. This is, I've hired Marines before, and they want a structure. Well, what you do is you take all this stuff, you throw them into a room. It's utter chaos. And what they do is they come out of this sprint planning session with a complete view of what they want to do. And then the team self-calibrate. It's a beauty to see. Okay? It's a beauty to see. So if you think you have team members, and now as we're becoming a more aged workforce, you have people who've been there 20 plus years in your company, right? And you seem like they just don't get it. Well, this is a great way for them to reinvigorate themselves. All right, questions? Yeah.
I work in the construction. I want to know how much, Agile project management do to improve, the situation in the industry. Or how much, Agile management apply to the environment.
How much does Agile apply to construction?
You're right. Like this morning, the lady who spoke on the managing complexity was talking about the big thing. So, looking at that as a scenario, would Agile project management have, impacted that project?
Yeah. All right, if I understand your question, if I don't, put me in the right direction again. I sat with the pharma people, and we went through the whole issue of doing regulatory filings, right? And I went, oh my God. Well, one of the big things that Agile does is it sort of cuts out the inefficiencies of the communication, all right? So one of the important things is that Agile, you don't have to implement all of Agile. All of Agile is this big. You want to keep the ceremonies together, okay, and make sure you practice them. But don't be boxed into, I have to do it at a certain time, all right, and I have to do it in a certain manner. So Agile can be done, you can have multiple subcontractors, you can have multiple people that are attached to your construction project. If you do a daily Scrum call, that's one ceremony that may actually get you ahead of the game, okay? If you do sprint planning and you say, you know what, let's just say we're building a building. We want to plan out how to build a foundation. okay? We want to plan out how to do X, Y, and Z. You can take the Agile ceremonies and put them into sections of your construction project management plan, okay? Jeff's wife's a Unitarian minister. He applied this to the Unitarian church they go to. What they found was that all the groups that actually produced the music, did the fundraisers, all of that, none of them talked to each other. And there was this huge friction between them. You would think, you know, people going to church, right? Well, she applied Agile, and it cut it all out. What they found was, now also, your company will have a backlog of things, okay? And this is the most important aspect of Agile, sprint planning. If you do the backlog correctly, it's all the things that the product owner wants to get done. So if you have multiple construction projects, and actually, let's talk afterwards. I actually taught a consulting thing to people at Gilbane Construction at one point, all right? And I gave them some very practical examples, and I'm more than willing to share those with you, okay? All right? So you have a product owner who determines what's going to get done. You have a Scrum Master who is the evangelist. They're the ones who make sure that the Agile pieces are moving correctly, all right? And they remove impediments. That's another big thing. And then you have the team. Those are the three roles. So you have 3 roles, and you have 4 ceremonies. Questions about that? Okay. So you have different things, Agile frameworks, Scrum teams. Now, one of the things, if you're practicing Agile, I would strongly suggest DevOps is something in software, right? Now, when you actually do a piece of software, you have to install it somewhere, correct? Right? And the people who install it, what? They're usually told last. Correct? Sound good? Yeah, sound current? Well, usually what happens is, what we did was we created a core team, like I mentioned before, and we had people around it. So the release engineering person and the head of operations said, yeah, we want to be involved. So I had a release engineering person on a Scrum call, and he said, Jim, should I be involved? I said, Mark, just understand what's going to come your way. All right, as opposed to getting it at the last minute, he knew right off the bat what's coming, okay? You bring people up front, you make them aware, they can leave if they want, but they're always involved in the team. So it pays tremendous benefits. Okay, Agile Frameworks, 7 principles. Let's hit on one of them. This is the one that causes the most consternation among especially the QA folks. All right, work over excessive documentation. Sound familiar? Don't keep documenting things. That's what most people take from that. That's the farthest from the truth. Here's a very practical tip. The documentation are actually attached to it as a virtual member of our Agile teams. We have 16 Agile teams in this unit, right? Well, the woman who does the documentation says, you know, I would never have known about this project to the bitter end. And then finally, I probably would have gotten half of it, and she was always like 3 months behind. She said, I actually see a light at the end of the tunnel, okay? Well, what I do is I say, you're still going to document, guys, to the team. But what we're going to do is we're going to build some time in the sprint, or another good technique is when you're done all your sprints, you do a 1-week documentation sprint. That's it. Okay? And everybody puts their head down, and you write everything you've done in the project. All right? Now, for the pharma people, this is not a possibility because they have to produce excessive amounts of documentation to the FDA. But most other industries should be able to do this. All right? Questions? You know, there's other things, value. That's the most important thing. Let me ask everyone a question. Do you think you could increase the value that you produce for your clients? You do? How many people? Raise your hand. All right? So what are you going to do about it? Oh, the room grows silent. What do you think you can do about it? Can you as a project manager help that? Right? You can definitely help it. And again, you should be walking out of here today with, here's 10 things I need to do. And you know what? I networked with 3 of these people. He or she's going to give me information. There's a wealth of knowledge in this room. Not just here, but out here. Okay? I always leave these conferences with at least 5 things I want to follow up on. And then usually what I do is I go back to those people and say, that worked, oh, that didn't work. Why didn't it work? What did I do wrong? okay? All right, so product visioning and backlog. As I start to go through this, and hold on, let me just go back and spend a little more time on the manifesto. All right? As you start to do this, amplify learning. How many people actually get to the point where you have single points of failure in your organization? Anybody? How about the gentleman just raised his hand?
I work at the university, and we recently did a project to analyze the student information system.
Yep.
And there were a couple points. It was implemented in like 1983, and there were a couple points where it was found out that one guy knew about 15 different processes on the back end for the mainframe.
Yep.
And there was one guy knew about it. There was no documentation about it, and so there was that one point of failure with crucial business activities.
So did the project go well?
The analysis found that out.
Yeah.
It was a project to analyze
Yeah.
the current state.
I've done a lot of work with educational institutions, not just to do agile classes, but to actually address that issue. Because what does that person think by not documenting and not telling anybody? What do they think?
He's really safe.
Oh, he's safe. He's never going to get fired. Well, you know what? He will get fired at one point. All right? Because again, what it comes down to is money. All right? And he'll probably be one of the last ones fired. But again, if anyone's ever sat into a meeting where you decide who gets on that list, how many people have done that before? It's not pleasant, right? It's not. And especially if you're not called to the meeting, because chances are you're on the list already, right? So it's not pleasant. And a few times I've sat through the last one, and a few people they brought up, I went, ooh, how could we lose him? And the person who makes the final decision said, he's gone, period, because I need to make a budget number. All right? So do you want to get out of that cycle? I would assume so, right? Yeah? You want to get out of that cycle? Well, you need to start advocating. So your first role is change manager. Second role is you have to become more of a program super agile manager. Now, what's your third role? You can transform yourself to an agile project manager. You can take the role of a project manager that's agile, that is also a scrum master, okay? And gets in the nitty-gritty of the day-to-day stuff that you have to do. So that's a crucial, crucial piece you need to understand, all right? And I've taught this at PMI, I've talked at PMI, I've talked at a bunch of places. If you don't do that, you're going to constantly be in that same iteration. Now, before we actually rolled out Agile, I met Jeff, and I explained some things. He goes, you're looking for a new job? I said, why? He goes, your company will be out of business in 2 years. I said, ooh. 16 months later, we were bought. Company was gone. He was a little over-optimistic. 16 months later, we were gobbled up, and they got rid of us, okay? They incorporated us in, they fired a bunch of people. So in his mind, he's worked for GE Healthcare. In his mind, if you don't do this, you're just asking to be cut. Not just from a personal perspective, but from a business perspective. How many people know Spotify? Spotify, big thing. How many people know Kayak? Well, let me tell you a story about Kayak. They had enormous quality issues. They couldn't deliver anything. The software was in horrendous shape. The CEO came in, decided to bring Agile in, brought some people who knew Agile very well. Well, all the developers sat in a room together, and they were very startup-ish, right? And I heard this story from Jeff. Well, one day he walked in with a table and put a big red phone in the middle of it. And they said, what's that? Well, he took every call that went into the client service center and routed it directly to the developers. Guess what happened? All the bugs went away. All right? All the bugs went away mysteriously. Because now all the developers, they picked up the phone and said, hello? Oh, how come I can't do it and book my trip? Well, mysteriously, they got to that point, okay? So Spotify has done it. Spotify does a thing called tribes, all right? I work with this company, Checkerboard, and the CEO and the general manager on the website for AD 649. I sat in front of them and I taught them Agile manufacturing, and they create a website. And I had 9 of them. They were the key 9 people in the company. And they were already behind 2 years. And I said, all right, guys, let's prove a point. I said, when's the website due? Well, the two development people said, January of next year, or this year, really. Right? I turned to the general manager. He goes, no, it's due in November. I turned to another person, the head of marketing. She goes, no, it's due in December. The CEO is the last person. I said, there's your problem right there. I said, none of you talk to each other. I said, you're so overburdened by so many processes. That's the reason why your website's not out. All right? It was a small enough team. We broke them up. They had daily Scrum calls, and they got the website out a month after we had planned. All right? A month after we had planned. So it does work, folks. It's very easy to do, but it takes guts. All right? One of the other things is, as you look at the Agile Manifesto, so as you look at this, there's different types of things, and the product owner does things like epics. They do user stories, okay? But what's one of the big things what's one of the major rules in Agile? One of the major rules in Agile is you never take work more than 4 weeks, and your sprint. Now, what is a sprint? A sprint is a determined amount of time that the team determines, not the managers, not the president, the team determines to do. So, I'm sorry, your name from the college?
BU.
What is it?
I work at BU.
Okay, what's your name?
Nate.
Dave.
Nate.
What is it?
Nate.
Nate, I'm sorry. So Nate, would it have helped if you actually used some of these methodologies?
So we were using sprints, but it wasn't, because we weren't developing a student system,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't like the right fit, it was more of a hybrid.
Okay.
Again, because we weren't developing anything, it was more just analyzing the current state of the system.
But the sprints did work, though.
The sprints did work.
Yeah, see? So again, his testament to the fact that it does work, and that's in a non-IT area, okay? But one of the beautiful pieces to this is, if you do this right and you take this gigantic piece of work that you have, okay, right, and you start to break it down, and the product owner, and let me give you a real practical example. If I had a product owner sitting next to me, I'd say, okay, Dan, tell the team what the project is, right? Now, they always say, well, they know what the project is. Well, I've done a million projects in my life, and I always do this every time I go into a new project. If there's, let's say, 6 or 7 people in the project, I can guarantee at least 3 of them have no clue what the project's about. Absolutely no clue. Then ask them, what time is it due? So if you look at these blocks here, the 7 principles of lean software development, ask them the next question. When's it due? I just gave you an example from that company called Checkerboard. 8 of them, there were 9 of them, including the CEO, 8 of them had a completely different view. At the end of it, Micah Chase, who's the CEO on our course, looked at me and went, oh my God, now I realize what the problem is. Okay? They were practicing Agile, they were practicing it very poorly. So I pulled them all into the room, said, okay, let's go through sprints. We actually did daily Scrum calls together. Gilbank Construction, for the gentleman in construction, we actually did Scrum calls. I had a 3-day training session with them, and I actually led Scrum calls with them. And they said, oh my God, this does work. This makes a lot more sense to what we do. Okay? So let's continue.
I think what we have to do is.
Oh, am I running over?
Take a.
So let me just finish up some things here. And let me just get back to where the slides are. I apologize. So we were at product visioning. Now, again, part of the issue here is that there's 3 roles, okay? So for the folks in development, the folks in insurance, things like that, it's very crucial, and as Raj Hedda comes up after me, one of the big things is, thank you, one of the big things is you have to understand is, for you to do scaled Agile framework, and scaled Agile framework is a very beneficial thing to have, you have to have the basics of Agile done, okay? We have a lot of people in our organization who start talking about, SAFe, as they call it, and they go, whoa, wait a minute. It's sort of like, trying to drive a car 100 miles an hour with only 3 wheels. It's not going to happen, okay? So get it down right, make yourself more disciplined, and you have 3 takeaways. One is you have to become a change agent, and I'm not talking about the the huggy-feely, change agent, the things you see in posters. You guys have to advocate. And this is the thing that just makes me, I hate to use the word irate, but I see a lot of project managers who just become very complacent. And they just sort of wait. And then they say, well, how come I'm out of a job? I said, you have a very unique opportunity here, folks. You guys need to change your organization. And you, as a project manager, should be at the top of that change. Change should come from the PMO. I've run PMOs, I've created PMOs, I've talked about PMOs. Mark Price Perry, who's very well known in the industry, him and I have presented together numerous times at think tanks. And I always say, Mark, the PMO should be the one driving the change. How many people in a PMO here? Right? You should be the one driving it. You should not be, you are driving business value. So it's important to understand that. So again, as you look at the product visioning, okay, and you look at the backlog, this is, I'm going to leave at this point right here, and I'm going to give you some real quick swipes, or some good broad strokes. Because one of the big issues is that the PMO sort of sits off to the side. They wait for projects to come to them, and be real precise about that. Wait for projects to come to them. You can't keep doing that. You have to be part of the member of that decision committee. All right. The recent PMO I went back to revitalize. It took me about 6 months. The manager who I had was extremely project management's. Yeah, I get it. I could. Yeah, but I could probably cut most of your guys and still live. Well, now it's at the point where when there's a project, the first thing he says is, have you talked to the PMO yet? So he gets it. All right, that's an important piece. So one of the other things that the PMO can do, and this is a good segue, is the PMO can actually help the product vision. They can execute the product strategy. So there's a few things in here. One is there's a thing called a backlog. And there's only a few more slides here, folks, but I think it's essential we go through this. How many situations do you have where, what company do you work for, if you guys don't mind me asking? Okay. One day you're doing this, next day you're doing something different, right? And in the afternoon or the second day you're doing something else different, right? And then by the time you leave at night, you're doing something else different, right? Sound familiar? Or how about other people? Yeah, you get nothing done, okay? You get nothing done because everybody's constantly changing the priorities. What we do as a product owner in Scrum is we actually say, you know what, Dan? You're in charge of the product. You're going to tell the team what to do. The team's going to tell you how to do it. And by the way, we're not going to change the priorities. Leave them alone. Set the direction. Let them figure out how they're going to do it and get the hell out of their way. Excuse my language. Okay, question? Ah, very good question. Now, I'm in a situation now where we have product owners who are very set in their ways. So you can take bugs and you put it into this thing called a product backlog. Okay? Well, two types of organizations. Ones that are extremely dysfunctional. So what we do is we usually create what's called a development stakeholders board. And there's people from each group of the company. And they decide what actually gets done and what comes in through the funnel. Now, really good Agile teams say, you know what? I'll listen to the product owner. The bugs go into that product backlog, okay? And the product owner says, I'm going to take things in a prioritized manner. And I have what's called user stories. I'm going to take these 3 user stories, give them to the team, let them figure out what it's going to be. And by the way, I'm also going to take the 4th item, which is a bug, okay? Some people call it technical debt, and they start to move that in. Well, we created a different way. And what we did was we created a development stakeholders board, and then finally we have a ton of bugs because we've been so dysfunctional. And we said, well, what are we going to do with the bugs? We can't have the development stakeholders board meet every day, every Friday for all day. So what we did was we have 5 product owners. We let them manage their technical debt. They managed any project under 160 hours in effort. So what they would do is they would take 5 user stories, say, here's a project, They went to the board and said, where does this stand in priority? Well, what we had was we had this monolithic, gigantic product. And what happened was we had separate sections split up in between different product owners. Well, everybody had their own priorities. So out of the 260 odd priorities we had, guess what? We had 12 number one priorities across the company. Well, we're leaning towards one priority for the whole company. We split the group into 3 different types of products. That was it. We went from 12 different product backlogs to 3. And then we said, you know what? We don't want the development stakeholders board to be overburdensome by these little bugs. You figure it out, product owner. When we give you a team, take bugs out of your backlog and work those into the project, okay? And if there isn't a team available, come to the development stakeholders board. And now here's another point, folks. And I learned this from a gentleman in Chicago in one of our groups. He created this development stakeholders board, and I said, Scott, this is great stuff. I said, I can validate the PMO tomorrow. I attached one of my project managers to sit on the board. He's a non-voting member, and all he does is he does reporting. He takes a picture of what our priorities are on Monday. He takes what we think are projects that are in trouble on Wednesday, and at the end of the week, he says, this is what we've done. And it's push reporting. All our general manager has to do is bring up his email. He has everything in front of him. All right, we use Jira. We're getting ready to roll out a massive undertaking in dashboards. Okay? So if you're working in a PMO, executives want push reporting. They don't want to go pull this stuff. And then on Wednesday, we go through some analytics, and we built some business intelligence into our process where we look at the key fields and we make a decision and say, ooh, that's bad. You're in requirements and it's due next month. You got a problem. Okay? So on Thursday morning, I always come in and I look at my email like this and go, oh, here we go. Because almost every project we call out, usually everyone fights us about it. And usually if we call out 10 of them, 8 of them we were right on. Okay? So if you're in the PMO, and this gets back to the PMO stuff, if you're not doing that, you have to start doing it. Okay? Because one of the big benefits of Agile is all the reporting has to be automated. Period. Let the team input it, the PMO stands behind it, and they extract everything out. Because I would have an old, I worked in development, I ran 3 development groups. And I went to the PMO, my old manager said, well, we'll do this so the PMO has. I said, stop right there. I said, I don't need anything. I have enough technical expertise. I can go into Jira. I can pull anything I want out, period. And he went, oh, okay. I said, you don't need to tell me where any of the projects are. I can find it out myself. All right? Do you guys do that? Do you guys do everything manual, right? Spreadsheets? You know, use Intuit QuickBase. Get a version of Jira. Another great tool is Yodiz, YODIZ.com. I don't get a cut from it. I wish I did. Okay? I'd be a millionaire by now. Yodiz is a great tool. There's a lot of other really good tools. If you go into our course, we actually give you a number of free tools. All right? So institute it. If you have a small development company, you should have no problem instituting it. So you have this backlog. It's a prioritized view of things, okay? Making sure you understand. You create value out of that. The product owner says, this is what I want to do. They turn to the team, and through the sprint and the sprint planning, they tell you how they're going to do it. And you have to go, I can't say a word, okay? Now, the other thing, I was asked a question, I think she's gone. You know, we do Agile, but it seems like it's not working. And she said, part of the problem is we have a bunch of people doing a bunch of other projects that are Waterfall, and then they go into this Agile stuff, and they seem like they're failing. I said, well, how long did they do sprint planning? She goes, we really don't do it, right? You guys did a lot of sprint planning the first time we ran the course, right? Okay? That's crucial. And be realistic, all right? How many times have you done a project plan and you hit enter? And what's the first thought out of your mind? You bless yourself and you say, God, let's hope we can meet this date, right? Sound familiar? And then you do rolling wave planning. Well, the client wants to know a date. Well, in Agile, you can say, you know what? We're going to give you the first 2 sprints, and we feel pretty comfortable. Well, the client's still going to be very irritated But when you deliver that first sprint, they're going to go, oh, this seems pretty good. The other piece is you have to, and she's nodding her head, right? This works. And then all of a sudden your trust level with your client goes up. I did a discussion here 4 years ago, building trust in projects. It's gone, folks. So how do you build trust? Get the team to trust you. All right? So I'm going to just sort of quickly go through some of these. Set a vision statement. Understand what you have to do. That's the most important thing. Okay? Product backlog. You can use it Salesforce, Jira, version 1. There's a million tools out there, all right, that you can put this into. I had a discussion with somebody and I said, our group president, he had multiple presidents reporting into him. I said, Scott, does John really understand? He goes, he does, Jim. And now what he does is he actually has a version 1 dashboard on his desk. And he goes, why is this project running so far behind? And he goes in and dives into the dashboard. And he extracts what he wants. And he said, it works. It definitely works. So again, the voice of the customer. Now the other thing is, this is all empowering. And I'll tell you a personal story. Hopefully I'm not running too late here, Raj. As you start to do this, one of the relationship managers we have is the wife of the president of the company. A little difficult dealing with her, right? Well, we started doing product demos to her, and she was just all over my development team. Well, what I found out was her biggest complaint was things would go into production, and she had no idea about them. So we stopped at the end of each sprint and showed it to her. And yeah, we got a bit of a tongue lashing, and the developers got depressed. They said, but you know what? That's behind you now. Fix it and move on, all right? So she became the voice of the customer. So again, you look at the go deep, all right? You talk about user stories. How deep do they have to be? They have to be deep enough that people can actually start doing physical work with them. That's it. And you figure it out as you go. All right, and there's a definition of ready, definition of done, all right? So at the end of it, people meander and they go through these whole processes. And at the end of it, you say, well, what's your definition? What's your goal? And they say, we don't have an idea. So the definition of done gives the team a clear view of what actually has to happen. So again, as you start to do planning, you're going to get your estimates better, all right? I think Alex is doing a more tools and technique thing. Feel free to ask me any questions you want. How do I estimate? How do I do story points? It's a process you learn better every time you do it. Okay? And I'm going to stop at user stories because that's more of the requirements that Alex is doing. Okay? And iterations and sprints, which we discussed. All right? Questions? I've answered all the questions. You have none, right? Have I piqued some interest? Yes. What are you going to do tomorrow or Monday?
Go Agile.
Go Agile, right?
Change the world.
Change the world, right? What's the next thing you're going to do? What's the third thing you're going to do? Send him an email, right? What's the fourth thing you're going to do? You're going to sign up for AD 649. Well, and I don't get extra commissions by doing this, folks. Okay? Dan, stand up. All right, I give Dan a big round of applause. Okay, because Dan was one of the original people in our course. Phenomenal job. I think I had you in previous courses too. I believe so. No, maybe not. Okay? All right, so folks, 3 roles real quick. Become a change agent. Second thing is, look at a program management level. Raj is going to take you to the next level now, okay? SAFE is more about the program management level. Hopefully I laid a good groundwork for you, okay? So you don't have to be at run every day, I got to figure this out, I got to work with the teams. You could actually say, you know what? Dictate to your senior management what you want to do. Set the agenda for them. Don't let them set the agenda for you. So take this, what Alex is doing, AD 649, and what Raj is going to do, and come out here with a usable toolkit tomorrow. Okay? I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. very much. Thank you.